Coups de pilon.
By David Diop, or The Word Made Flesh and Fury. Translated from French. The work of David Diop, 1927 to 1960, as brief as it was brilliant, remains one of the most gripping testimonies of militant Négritude poetry. His sole collection,
Coups de pilon.
Hammer Blows, 1956, resonates with undiminished force, hammering consciences and celebrating the indefatigable hope of an Africa standing tall. Born in Bordeaux to a Senegalese father and a Cameroonian mother, Diop experienced Africa less through prolonged residence than through dream and heritage, which takes nothing away from the power of a voice that knew how to echo the sufferings and revolts of an entire continent. A poetry of revolt. Diop's poetry is above all a cry of refusal in the face of colonial iniquity, a cry of pain in the face of his people's humiliation. In a direct style, stripped of all superfluous ornament, the poet delivers his truths like so many hammer blows intended, in his own words, to burst the eardrums of those who do not want to hear and crack like whip strokes on the egoisms and conformisms of order. Each poem is an indictment drawing up the bloody balance sheet of the tutelary era. Thus, in The Vultures, he denounces the hypocrisy of the civilizing mission. In those days, with shouts of civilization, with holy water on domesticated brows, the vultures built in the shadow of their talons the bloody monument of the tutelary era. Violence is omnipresent, not only in the theme, but in the very rhythm of the phrase, sober and sharp as a blade. The famous and laconic poem The Time of Martyrdom is the most poignant illustration, a veritable litany of dispossession and colonial crime. The white killed my father, for my father was proud. The white raped my mother, for my mother was beautiful. These unadorned verses, giving the text its striking force, have disconcerted some critics. Sana Kamara sees in them, for example, a simplicity of style that borders on poverty. Even if the poet attempts to captivate us with the irony of events, yet it is undoubtedly in this economy of means, this refusal of artifice, that the brutality of the subject reaches its paroxysm. Africa is at the heart of the word. If revolt is the engine of his writing, Africa is its soul. She is that idealized motherland, glimpsed through the prism of nostalgia and dream. The opening apostrophe of the poem Africa, Africa, my Africa, is a declaration of belonging and filiation. This Africa, he admits to having never known, but his gaze is full of your blood. She is by turns the loving and scorned mother, the dancer with a body of black pepper, and the beloved woman, Ramakam, whose sensual beauty is a celebration of the entire race. It is in this dreamed Africa that the poet draws the strength of hope. To the despair inspired by the back that bends and lies down under the weight of humility, a voice responds, prophetic, impetuous son, that robust and young tree, that tree over there, splendidly alone in the midst of white and withered flowers, is Africa, your Africa that grows again patiently, obstinately, and whose fruits gradually have the bitter taste of freedom. A militant humanism. To reduce Diop's work to an anti-racist racism, to borrow Sartre's formula, would be to misunderstand its universal scope. If the denunciation of black oppression is the starting point, Diop's struggle embraces all the wretched of the earth. His poetry is a clamor that rises from Africa to the Americas, and his solidarity extends to the docker of Suez and the coolie of Hanoi, to the Vietnamese lying in the rice field, and the convict of the Congo, brother of the lynched of Atlanta. This fraternity in suffering and struggle is the mark of a profound humanism. The poet does not content himself with cursing, he calls for collective action, for unanimous refusal embodied by the final injunction of challenge to force, stand up and cry, no. For, ultimately, beyond the violence of the word, David Diop's song is guided only by love, the love of a free Africa within a reconciled humanity. The work of David Diop, cut down in full bloom by a tragic death that deprived us of his forthcoming manuscripts, retains a burning relevance. Leopold Sédar Senghor, his former teacher, hoped that with age, the poet would go humanizing himself. One can affirm that this humanism was already at the heart of his revolt.
Coups de pilon.
Hammer Blows remains an essential text, a classic work of African poetry, a viaticum for all youth yearning for justice and freedom. That is already a lot for a work that is, all things considered, quite limited, for a first and, alas, last work. But there are texts that go to the heart of things and speak to the entire being. Lyrical, sentimental expression of a personal demand and anger, this poetry launched gravely to assault chimeras, is indeed one of those that will eternally, to plagiarize satire, defy the lackeys of order, that is, the agents of repression, one of those that will always obstinately remind us that the work of man has only just begun, that happiness is always to be conquered, more beautiful and stronger.